Hello, everybody. It's coming up to our third session for Out of the Ordinary, and what with all these bank holidays we've been having, it feels like the time is all sort of concertina together. So we thought we'd send you a message before we get to this Friday, and give you some ideas of matters arising from the last meeting we had. So to recap, we had two harpists with us last time, and that was Esther and Marid. But Esther had a bit of trouble with sound, and that kind of had a slight knock-on effect on the session because she struggled to get. We couldn't hear her, she couldn't hear us, and it was all a little bit sort of frazzled in the beginning. But that meant that you and she left the meeting to go into a breakout room and see if you could sort out the sound.
Yes, we did, which was our first breakout room experience of the
It
project, which was really good. And we then re-emerged into the space to beautiful music by Marid and Caroline, which wasn't recorded, but it was such a beautiful moment. I know we didn't catch all of it, but do you want to speak a little bit about that, Caroline? How that music came
it's
about?
exactly that. The fact that it wasn't recorded, really, it was a moment that we all enjoyed, but is not to be experienced again. Interesting, really, particularly with the emphasis being on time and space, because it prompted Leslie to comment that now is the time, the only time, really, because once we're not in that moment of now, then we're in another now, the next sort of moment of present.
Which now are we talking about?
So we did make a beautiful piece. It was related to one of the photographs that Louise, John had uploaded for Louise, and that she chose her favourite from those photographs. And we captured some of the idea that she had spoken about in it. Some of the things that everybody saw in the photograph, some of the things that people commented on, they made a sort of pooled impression of this picture. And then Marid and I took those things and turned it into a piece of music, which is now wisply gone away in the ether. But that prompted some quite interesting thoughts about how we know what's the right music for that now, because John and Louise were ducking in and out for their university UCL study about the right music, and they had found that perhaps they had on that occasion been asked to listen to some music which turned out to be not really the right music for them for that moment, and that did just give us pause to sort of consider how we do arrive at what is the right thing, and how can we make it reflect the group of people who are there, what things are involved in trying to make it more right in that moment, whether we take into account what people are looking at, how they see the things that they're looking at, how they hear the things that we've said, how they take the ideas we're thinking about or the images we've shared and take them on in a different way. So we came up with a couple of ideas which might be useful for this coming Friday for some experiments. One was about colours, the vibrancy of the colours, that Graham had said that made it much easier for him to distinguish the visual information. And Michael spoke about the wild animals that often appear in his vision. It just kind of gave us a thought that that's different for everybody. We couldn't really say that it was going to be exactly the same for everybody, even if they both have a diagnosis of the same condition. They still will interpret things in their own way. So we wondered about using those blocks of colour to direct the music. We wondered of scarves, post-its, things that could appear in the space and fill it with particular colours. We could use those to guide the music. And we know that other people have had different ideas. Steve, you've got the idea of directing the music with particular mood for something that you're making, and sort of we want that to be able to feed its way into our sessions as well, since all the ideas are generated here, and then hopefully you take those threads and explore them somewhere else, which it sounds like you are doing. But we wondered if we could do that in the session, that you could tell us what it is you imagine for the music and we make it, and then the space is shared for everyone else to guide the music in that way that they want to. It could be that we use the sounds themselves, we copy the sounds. Leslie spoke about echolalia and the sort of patterns that Mike might copy and speak words that we've heard together, and the words became an important part of last time's session, actually for the first time in a while. And we haven't used words for a while like that. We pooled our ideas of the photographs we've been looking at, and then we arranged them into a poem, which, as it happened, you did that so beautifully, Hermione. You put the words in and they emerged looking like a sort of blossoming
Yeah. Well,
flower head of a poem.
I just typed what I heard, so it really did come from the group. But it was amazing to actually be doing that as the session was unfolding, and to have this other document that I was typing in while still listening and seeing everyone, and then to be able to have that to share with everyone and see how, just from taking what was actually said without consciously saying, oh, that's going to be line number 1 and that's going to be line number 2, that it just naturally created that shape. And I think it's a beautiful poem, and I guess a bit like a weed, of like, that's just what happened. It's just where the words
It
fell
just grew up
and it grew from
in
there.
its own place.
Mm.
And it was read most beautifully by John, which also gave us the idea that the words themselves, I know in very early days, Michael, you suggested poems, and we have, Christine as well and Leslie, we have shared poems and poets that have been important to us and captured some words of theirs. So it's really lovely to have our words alongside those we've shared, sort of thinking about how they sound and the kind of picture that they conjure up in each person's head. A bit like I've been to a couple of opera performances where they've been sign language interpreted, and somebody has kind of lived that performance in a different way alongside. So even though I had the full experience of being able to hear the music and read the captions, there was also this completely driven by gesture and the emotion of the music. Somebody was interpreting it like that. So we wondered whether that's the sort of idea also we could use, feeding in the words that we generated. They might well be very useful for one of our guest musicians this time who's coming, who's going to be Lucy, and she's a singer. So we're thinking that it would be lovely to have some words that we actually made to give her. Perhaps she'd like to weave them, or one of the other musicians might want to weave them into our framing music. We've already got some updates on framing music for this week, so I can't wait for you to hear that. So yeah, we might be able to interpret the images in words and then organise the words to be part of the directing the music. The one that Marad and I played last time, it was from a picture where we shared our ideas. It had a very thundery sort of brooding sky and a real point of light in the centre. And then this little row of very bright sunlit houses and very tiny people in the middle, all in this sort of little centre of very strong golden light, and all the rest of it sort of brooding with clouds. There's something lovely about somebody interpreting what they've seen. So we thought that that might be a way to interpret, audio describe the images that we see for each other, and have that be another layer of sharing experience. So we'll be sending you some of the music we made. Sadly, not that Here and Gone music that Marad and I made, but we made some other very beautiful music in that session too that we can share with you. And the poem we made, read most beautifully by John. Some ideas around colours that maybe you'll like to bring to the session on Friday, or some other ideas of how you would like to be in charge of making the right music for that moment for you or for our group at that moment. So we're looking forward to seeing you on Friday. Hermione, have I forgotten anything that we said we were going to feed in there?
I don't think so, but just to say that the live stream
yes,
that was recorded and captured, that now was captured, and we are able to share that. So I'll share that in the email, and you're welcome to share that with your friends and family, or anyone that you think might like to relive that experience of that lovely celebratory session.
There was one really beautiful photograph that we'd shared, which was of a poppy about to, whilst it's all in its little furry sort of bulging husk. And we talked about how that looked a bit like a chrysalis. So I think that's the way we're thinking of all of these ideas, a little planted seed that you might share in various different ways and allow to bloom in its own way. So yes, we'll be able to share that live stream with you, and you can send it to people who you think might be interested to see it. We are looking forward to seeing you on Friday. come with your ideas and an open mind, and let's see how we go from there. See you
Bye
then.
for now.
Bye for now.